At our baby's baptism, I was handing out thank you cards when my mother-in-law snatched them from my hands and said, "Let someone who knows real gratitude handle this." She rewrote every message, signed them from her. When I protested, my husband said, "She raised me. Let her feel involved." That night, I checked the baptism certificate. My name was misspelled. Hers was listed under guardian. I asked why. My husband said, "She asked." I didn't want to upset her. I'm still shaking as I write this. I'm so angry I can barely sit still. My name is Callie. I'm 32, and I live in Cedar Rapids, Iowa with my husband, Nate, and our new baby boy, Mason. I thought life was finally coming together. I thought the hard part was over after months of late nights, crying fits, and all the stress of being new parents. I thought the baptism would be a happy, simple day. Family, food, laughter, blessings. I was so wrong. The church service was early on a Sunday morning. I got up at 5 to make sure everything was perfect. Mason was bathed, dressed in his little white outfit I had picked out months ago. Nate seemed half asleep the whole morning, but I didn't even care. I was running on adrenaline. The ceremony itself was beautiful. Mason barely made a peep. I had tears in my eyes when the pastor blessed him. People clapped softly. I looked out and saw Rhonda, my mother-in-law, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. I thought maybe, just maybe, we could have a nice day without drama. Afterward, we had a lunch reception in a little rented hall down the street. Just simple stuff, sandwiches, cupcakes, coffee. Nothing fancy. I spent a fortune on decorations and favors. Handmade thank you cards for every guest with personal notes inside. I wanted everyone to know how grateful we were. I made the mistake of handing the cards out personally. When I got to Rhonda's table, everything changed. She smiled, this fake, tight smile, and yanked the stack right out of my hands. "Let someone who knows real gratitude handle this," she said. It wasn't a joke. She wasn't laughing. I froze. I looked around, expecting Nate to say something. He didn't. He just looked down at his plate. Rhonda sat there, bold as anything, pulling out a pen from her purse. She started opening my cards, crossing out my notes, and rewriting her own messages. She signed each one from herself. Sometimes she even underlined her name. I felt like I was outside of my own body, watching a nightmare. I walked over and whispered, "Please stop. Those are for me and Nate." She smiled up at me sweetly. "Oh, honey, it's fine. People expect something heartfelt." Her voice was syrupy and fake, the kind that makes your skin crawl. I turned to Nate, hoping for backup. "She raised me," he said with a shrug. "Let her feel involved." Involved? She was taking over. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab the cards and rip them back. But everyone was watching, and it was supposed to be Mason's day, not a day for a screaming match. So I smiled through it. I handed out cupcakes. I thanked people with a lump in my throat. I shoved it down. "It's just a day. Let it go. It's not worth it." Later that night, after the guests left and Mason was finally asleep, I found the baptism certificate lying on the kitchen counter under a pile of paper plates. I picked it up, smiling, thinking it would be something to frame for his room. Then I saw it. My name, my own name, was spelled wrong. Not just a typo. It was missing a whole letter. It barely looked like my name at all. And worse, under the section labeled Guardian, where it should have been blank or listed Nate and me, it said, Guardian. Rhonda, last name. I swear my vision went red. I stormed into the bathroom where Nate was giving Mason a bath. I shoved the certificate in front of his face. "What is this?" I said, trying not to scream. He looked up like I was interrupting something minor. "She asked to be listed." I didn't want to upset her. I stared at him, waiting for him to laugh or say he was joking. He didn't. "She's not his guardian," I said. "We are. You and me. She's not even the godmother. She's old, Callie. She's sensitive." "It's just a piece of paper," Nate said, like that explained everything. Just a piece of paper? My hand was shaking so bad, I almost dropped it. She's trying to erase me, I said. He didn't say anything. He didn't deny it. That's when I realized it wasn't just the cards. It wasn't just the certificate. It wasn't just the day. This was a pattern. A sickness. Rhonda had to be the center of everything. And Nate, he was so used to it, he didn't even see it as a problem. He thought letting her trample over me was normal. Acceptable. And now, she had inserted herself into Mason's life on paper. She had rewritten history, literally. And Nate had let her. That night, after Nate fell asleep, I sat alone at the kitchen table with the baptism certificate in front of me. I couldn't stop staring at it. I felt like a ghost. Like I didn't even exist in my own family. I thought about everything. The little comments Rhonda had made when I was pregnant. How she called Mason her baby at the hospital. How she told people she was the reason Mason had Nate's strong genes. I had brushed it off every time. Told myself not to start drama. Told myself it wasn't worth it. But now it wasn't just words. It was real. On paper. Legal looking. I didn't sleep that night. I kept thinking, if something happened to Nate and me, would she try to take Mason? Would she even need to try? She already had her name listed. It made me sick to think about it. The next morning, before Nate even opened his eyes, I told him flat out, "We're getting that certificate fixed. Today." He groaned and pulled the blanket over his head. "It doesn't matter, Callie. Let it go." "No," my voice cracked. "If you won't fix it, I will." I got Mason dressed and packed him into the car. Drove to the church by myself. When I walked in, Pastor Reed looked surprised to see me. I laid the certificate down on his desk, pointed to Rhonda's name, and said, "This is wrong. This needs to be corrected." He looked embarrassed. Said something about how Rhonda had made a strong case at the time. I don't know what she told him. Maybe that Nate and I were young and needed help. It didn't matter. I stood there until he agreed to reissue a corrected certificate. I thought I could breathe again after that. I thought it was over. I was so wrong. The next day, Rhonda showed up at our door without warning. She stormed into the house, holding the new certificate in her hand, crumpled and wrinkled like she had squeezed it in her fist the whole way over. "You ungrateful little girl," she hissed at me, right in front of Mason. Nate rushed into the room. "Mom, what are you? You embarrass me at church," she screamed. "Do you know what people are saying about me? That I forced myself into your family? That I'm desperate?" I just stood there, holding Mason tighter against my chest. I didn't even know what to say. Rhonda turned to Nate. "You're letting her push me out of my grandson's life." Nate looked torn. He looked weak. And then he said it. Maybe the worst thing he could have said. "She's his mother, Mom. You're not." The words hit the room like a bomb. Rhonda's face twisted into something almost unrecognizable. She pointed a shaking finger at me. "This isn't over," she said. Then she stormed out, slamming the door so hard the whole frame rattled. I thought, finally, Nate had chosen me and Mason. But 3 days later, when I came home from grocery shopping, I found Nate sitting in the living room. Rhonda was there too. And they were talking to a lawyer. I heard my own name come out of the lawyer's mouth. I heard grandparent rights. I heard emergency guardianship. I dropped the grocery bags right there on the floor. Nate looked up at me, guilt written all over his face. "She just wants to make sure she's protected, Callie," he said quietly. "In case anything happens." I laughed. I actually laughed out loud. "She's not protecting Mason," I said. "She's protecting herself." Rhonda just sat there, smug as anything, watching me fall apart. I left the groceries on the floor and picked up Mason without a word. I could feel my heart pounding through my chest. I carried him upstairs to our room, locked the door, and sat on the bed, rocking him while trying not to break down completely. Through the thin walls, I could hear them downstairs. Rhonda's high, fake sweet voice. Nate's low, tired answers. Talking about me like I wasn't even there. Like I wasn't Mason's mother. After about an hour, I heard the lawyer leave. I waited a few minutes before cracking the door open. Nate was standing in the hallway, looking like he'd aged 10 years in a day. "We need to talk," he said. I let him talk first. He said Rhonda wasn't filing anything yet, that it was just a consultation, that she was worried about being cut off from Mason if we ever moved away, that she wanted legal assurances. She's scared, Callie, he said. She's just acting out of fear. I stared at him like he was a stranger. And what about my fear, Nate? What about protecting me and Mason? He didn't have an answer. That night, after he fell asleep, I grabbed his phone off the nightstand. I know I shouldn't have, but something in my gut told me I needed to see. I opened his messages. There were dozens of texts between him and Rhonda, all behind my back. Rhonda, you know she's unstable. She's going to ruin Mason. Nate, I know. I'm handling it. Please just trust me. Rhonda, if it comes down to it, you know Mason would be better off with me. Nate, I know, Mom.
I know, Mom.
I sat there in the dark, the phone shaking in my hands. He didn't just let her bulldoze me. He agreed with her. I realized in that moment that I had no one on my side. No one fighting for me. I wasn't safe. Mason wasn't safe. The next morning, I packed a bag for me and Mason. Just a small one. Diapers, clothes, my wallet. I didn't have a plan yet. I just knew I couldn't stay. I waited until Nate went into the shower. I picked up Mason and walked out the front door. Got in the car.
Drove.
I didn't even know where I was going. I just knew I needed to get away. I ended up at my sister Rachel's house across town. We hadn't been super close for a while, but when she opened the door and saw my face, she just pulled me into a hug. She didn't ask questions. She let me in. She let Mason sleep in her guest room. For the first time in months, I felt a little safe. But the feeling didn't last long. The next day, a police officer knocked on Rachel's door. He handed me a piece of paper, a court summons. Emergency temporary custody hearing. Filed by Rhonda. Signed by Nate. I was being sued for custody of my own son. When the officer left, I just sat there on Rachel's couch, staring at the papers. My hands were numb. My body felt like it didn't belong to me anymore. Rachel sat next to me and kept saying, "We'll figure it out. We'll fight this." But I couldn't even speak. Filed by Rhonda and Nate. Not just his mother. Nate too. My husband. The man I had trusted to build a family with me. The court date was set for only 5 days later. They were pushing it fast, saying it was an emergency situation, claiming Mason's living environment was unstable and that I had mental health concerns.
Lies.
All lies. Rachel helped me find a lawyer that same day. Mr. Jacobs. He was blunt with me. "This isn't going to be easy," he said. "Grandparent rights in Iowa aren't automatic. But if the other parent, the father, is siding with her, it makes things very dangerous for you." "What can I do?" I whispered. "Prove you're stable. Prove you're the better parent. Expose anything you can about their motives." I barely slept those 5 nights. Mason slept peacefully next to me while I lay awake, thinking about all the moments Nate had chipped away at me. All the moments Rhonda had treated me like a stranger around my own son. They were building a case that I wasn't good enough, that I didn't deserve my own baby. The morning of the hearing, Rachel drove me to the courthouse. I wore the most professional outfit I had, but my hands were still shaking as I carried Mason through security. Rhonda was already there, sitting smugly in the waiting area in a navy blue suit, like she was going to a business meeting, not trying to rip a child from his mother. Nate sat next to her, looking sick but not sick enough to stop this. When he saw me, he couldn't even meet my eyes. The hearing was brutal. Rhonda's lawyer stood up and painted me as emotional, unstable, irresponsible. They had pages of fake evidence, texts Rhonda had twisted, times she claimed I forgot things like Mason's nap schedule once at a family party, and accusations that I was isolating Mason from his loving paternal family. I wanted to scream. I wanted to jump out of my seat and throw the papers back in their faces. But Mr. Jacobs squeezed my arm lightly, a reminder. Stay calm. Look stable. Then it was my turn. I showed the real texts. The ones from Nate and Rhonda, how they plotted behind my back. How they talked about me like an obstacle, not a person. I showed pictures and notes from Mason's pediatrician visits, proof he was healthy, thriving, well cared for. I showed pictures of my home.
Clean. Safe.
Full of love. At one point, under cross-examination, Rhonda slipped up. She said something about how Mason would be better off raised my way instead of the way Callie was doing it. The judge caught that. "You're suggesting a preference, not a danger?" he asked her, eyebrows raised. Rhonda's lawyer tried to walk it back, but the damage was done. Still, it wasn't enough. The judge didn't immediately rule. He said he needed time to review. We were left in limbo. For 2 days. 2 days of hell. 2 days where I didn't know if my own child would be ripped from my arms. Then something happened that blew the whole thing wide open. Rachel got a call from a mutual friend who worked at the church. The friend said she overheard Rhonda bragging during Bible study that she was planning to move to Arizona with Mason if she got guardianship. Not visit. Not help.
Move.
Without me. Without Nate. Just her and Mason. She had already picked out a house. She had a moving company lined up. And she had lied about it in court. Rachel immediately called my lawyer. He filed an emergency motion to reopen evidence. When we presented the church friend's sworn statement to the judge, everything changed. The judge called Rhonda back into court. Under pressure, she admitted she had considered moving Mason out of state. She said it was just in case, but her story kept falling apart under questioning. It became very clear this was never about Mason's best interest. It was about Rhonda's control. And Nate? He sat there in silence. He didn't defend me. He didn't defend his own mother either. He just watched everything burn down around him. The judge looked furious. He slammed his hand on the bench and said loud enough for the whole courtroom to hear, "This court does not reward manipulation or lies." In that moment, I knew I was going to win. The judge dismissed the case for custody immediately. He even scolded Rhonda and Nate on the record for gross misuse of emergency filings and acting in their own interests, not the child's. He ordered that Rhonda was not to have any unsupervised contact with Mason unless I approved it. When the gavel fell, Rhonda gasped like she had been slapped. She stumbled back like she couldn't believe it. I stood up holding Mason tight against me, heart pounding. I didn't even look at Nate. Outside the courthouse, Rachel and I hugged so tightly Mason squealed between us. But it wasn't over yet. Nate followed me to the parking lot. He was red-faced, sweating, wild-eyed. "Callie, wait," he called after me. I turned around slowly. I was done being scared. I was done playing nice. "You're the reason this happened," I said, voice low and cold. "You let her poison everything. She's my mother,"
he shouted.
"She just wanted to be part of Mason's life." "No," I said. "She wanted to own him, and you let her." He opened his mouth to say something else, but I cut him off. "I'm filing for divorce," I said. "Full custody. You can see Mason when a court tells you it's safe." His face crumbled, like he finally understood the weight of what he had done. "You're serious?" he whispered. "Dead serious. You chose her over us. Over your wife. Over your son. You don't get another chance." I turned, buckled Mason into the car seat, and drove away without looking back. 1 year later, Mason and I are safe now. We live in a small rental house across town, closer to Rachel. Life is peaceful. No surprise knocks on the door. No backstabbing. I finalized the divorce 6 months after that day. Nate didn't fight it much. Maybe because he knew he would lose. Maybe because he had already lost everything that mattered. The judge gave me full custody of Mason. Nate gets supervised visits twice a month at a family center. No overnight stays. No solo trips. Rhonda tried to show up at one of the visits once. She wasn't allowed inside. She caused a scene in the parking lot and ended up banned from the center permanently. Last I heard, she moved to Arizona anyway. Alone. No Mason.
No Sean.
No do-over at motherhood. Sometimes I wonder if Nate blames her. Or himself. It doesn't matter. In the end, they both made their choices. And I made mine. I chose to fight. I chose Mason. I chose me.